On this episode of Danielosophy, I'm hosting a discussion about how young adults compromise in their relationships. With the pressure to take that next step, we may not think about what we actually want. Sometimes we make mistakes or move too fast out of desperation or lust. Why should someone get married? Love? How much does sex have an impact on this decision? Is it truly a holy matrimony, or is it just pressure from society? Even though the Bible counsels us and helps us make choices, talking it out with friends can help us stay on the right track.
3, 2, 1. Is it recording? It is recording.
Yep.
I think it's recording. Awesome. Great. So, hey, everybody. Welcome back to my show. Thank you for joining me on Danielosophy. If you aren't following me or you aren't subscribing, you should be subscribing. This episode is going to be really legit. I hope that you love it. And if you love it, go ahead and hit that like button. All right. Y'all stupid. Okay, so today we're talking about marriage. If you watched my last episode, you already know I'm not anti-marriage, but I'm not trying to get married. So, but I have people on this chat with me on this little discussion who think that marriage is a goal, and that's definitely a righteous goal. So I want to ask you guys, why should people get married? Why do you think people should get married?
You want to go first?
I'm here looking up questions. I don't think it's about like why we should get married, because it's not really all about the marriage. It's really about the partnership that you have and the communion that you have with God and your partner. So I don't want to look at marriage just because of like oh, I'm gonna get a magical wedding, even though I do want a magical wedding one day. But the reason why I want to get married is I do want to find that person that I really want to share my entire life with, to have my children with. That's really one of my focus. And of course, I want to find love in a way that I'm able to continue to have that friendship with my partner and just have fun and lit. And I feel like marriage is going to be lit if you do it right. If you do it the right way.
I mean, so I agree mostly, and I guess like that's not a question I'm sure I've thought about that question at some point. Like, what is the purpose of marriage? And I know from like a Christian standpoint that there's a lot of analogies to how we're taught that we should emulate with the love of Christ. Like, we're never going to necessarily be able to have his unconditional love because we're imperfect by nature, but that doesn't stop you from trying. And so I guess I've kind of grown to think that marriage is kind of like your sister said, like a partnership where you're not necessarily, there are benefits that come along with it, but I feel like the main benefit or the main takeaway is that you have someone to practice that with. You have someone to practice that unconditional love with. And there's times like, no marriage is perfect. And even I feel like even the best of marriages have their moments where at some point you have to compromise. At some point you have to understand that you have to step outside of your shoes to understand how that other person feels. And so I feel like marriage is all about, is the first union that God put in place. And I feel like in part because he calls us to love each other as he loves us. So, and I think marriage puts you in that position where you're forced to do that. And maybe not forced, but you're definitely presented with a situation or a relationship where that's the way that relationship's going to be as optimal strength. So yeah.
So my question is, or my frustration is, or less my frustration, but my confusion is that we don't see that. Like we don't see people choosing marriage because they want to have a partner for the rest of their life. Like what we see is baby mama drama. What we see is, lust. What we see is is, you know, I'm not saying selfishness, but it's like what we see is this kind of like this romantic, like we see this picture that this thing is supposed to be,
See
and
the
it's like
wedding.
I wanna have it like this. I want this, and it's not there's. I mean, how are we supposed to teach our kids like, hey, marriage is a compromise, and that's really all it is. It's a partnership, but it's also a hey, like it's not all about you at all, because that's not what we see.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a fact. I think that, and I feel like there's a lot of factors that go into that. I think humans by nature, we are selfish. I think that even without looking at the current climate of where we are today, and I feel like as teachers, we can all kind of attest to where our society is headed towards or where we are. I think by the fact that we're born into this world, we're innately selfish. And so for a lot of people that have not been introduced to God and the purpose of Christianity or the relationship that you have in Jesus, I think that a lot of that, and I feel like some, I feel like some religions, have messages that kind of compare to that. But I feel like where you don't see that consistency to preach a truth like that, it's just like everybody's out for self. Everybody wants that instant gratification. Everybody wants what's going to make them feel good in the moment. Why can't I have this? Like this is what I want. This isn't it's not against the law. It's not illegal. I'm not going to get in trouble or go to jail for it. So I think that that's part of why we don't see it. And then on top of that, I think that just where we are, we're kind of like living in a time where everything is about self. Speak your truth and live by it. Seek what you want. I feel like there's a difference between, and I'm going all over the place, but I think at the end of the day, we've just kind of gotten so far removed from thinking about each other collectively and thinking about what we are here to do for each other. And now we're kind of in a place where everybody's kind of for themselves. We see that, and not that that's new, but now I feel like, it gets more common as time goes.
Yeah, I kind of feel you on that. Like it's more selfish. I feel like it's more I can say from a woman's standpoint, is like we're taught to, you're supposed to grow up, get married, have kids, and be a housewife. That's what you're supposed to do, right? But then I have I was taught to be this independent woman, to where that I'm supposed to be self-made, make sure I have my own money, make sure that I'm okay, make sure I'm doing what I need to do, don't worry about nobody else, don't compromise with no dude, like all this stuff. So that right there is already something that I have to think about when I'm thinking about getting married and things that way. Because I'm thinking like, first of all, wait, I've been so independent my whole about 30 years, and now I'm about to pop and jump into something I have to not only put myself in with my husband, but I also he has to do the same thing. So we don't know if that's going to clash. We don't know if that's going to tear us apart. We don't know what happens, and what happens with that. That's when marriage starts to become a marriage for like a couple of years, and then next thing you know, we're divorcing because of our irreconcilable differences, because we're still stuck in that selfish nature of like, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to this. But if you're living in my house, we're gonna do it this way. So there's no common ground, or like I keep saying, like there's no partnership. So that's why it's kind of like, it's like you got the drama, you got the you're gonna have the drama, you're gonna have the money issues, you're gonna have all of that issues that you all are not fixing, knowing that this is really between you, him, and God, but not you, him, and everybody in your mind that's crowding your judgment.
Yeah. Let alone, did you have those conversations when you started to date and before you got to that point? Like, right. Marriage for the right reasons is so important, and I feel like the moment you throw that out the window, you open yourself up to a whirlwind of troubles that you won't be prepared for.
And you be like, compromise? What? I need to do? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm okay. Yeah, I'm not about to do that. I'm sorry. Like,
So-
you're not going to take my my closet, my half of my closet. I'm sorry, you're just not going to do that. Like, it's just little. It can be stuff that little can divorce someone. Like, it's that crazy. So if you don't have that conversation from the get-go, like, that's where we go back to dating. Like, what's your purpose of dating? Are you dating just because, I just want to see how this feels and go for it? Or you're dating with the purpose of, like, I know I'm in the process of, like, I really want to settle down. I really want to connect with someone that I want to spend the rest of my life with. Like, is that my mindset or not? So that's where I'm kind of going.
what are the deal breakers, right? So like in any relationship, what are the things that you just will not, let's say that you're trying to get married, right? You're a week away, right? What is the deal breaker? Like, no, I cannot, I'm not gonna have this.
Week. A week.
I don't.
I mean, it's happened. You know,
Listen.
yeah, that type of stuff is happening.
Like,
I
okay,
mean,
like,
it has happened. I had a situation, to be honest, where there was one of my friends told me that I guess their ex was trying to settle their royal oaths before they actual got married, and I was like, I hope you didn't do that, because that would be a deal breaker for me. Have your fun, but you're not going to. That's a deal breaker. If you cheat on me a week before we get married, that's a problem. And hopefully I will probably make my decision, or hopefully God sends me discernment in vision. Like, okay, this dude is not for you. I need you to run far away. One of my ride with the tennis shoes. Gone. We gone.
So hitting. What is the verdict on hitting?
Hitting?
Yeah.
Like domestic abuse?
Oh.
What's the so what happens and what we notice is in some marriages is like, it's like, I love him or I love her. Shoot, her too. I love her so much.
That
and
is true.
like, that's what I'm saying. Like I feel like
But usually with, like, if you're thinking about, like, someone hitting me, I think there's always a sign. There's always a sign of some form of abuse throughout the trial of your relationship. I feel like there is, like, because it's not only just physical abuse. There's verbal abuse. There's emotional abuse. There's spiritual abuse. So that physical abuse probably already has happened. So if I'm already a week away, knowing that this person's abusing me, is not making me feel loved, not affirming me, not making me feel protected or anything. Yeah, I don't think that wouldn't be a week away. I think the pastor would probably tell me about it. Like, nah, sis, like, nah, because I'm going to counseling before, because I want to do premarital counseling before I think about, like, walking down the aisle, because I just feel like that's going to help set that foundation when we get into marriage.
I agree. I feel like, if you're asking that question for us personally, I think that specific things, like any type of abuse, I feel like is a deal breaker. Like any type, especially if you're complacent in that. I feel like it may be because you haven't necessarily grown to want to face that and work on that, because that's reality. Some people have to work on traumas that they bring into relationships, and if you don't work on that, then it's simply not going to be a productive environment or a safe environment where two people cannot have a toxic relationship. I think beyond that, like you said, hitting. And I feel like if you're talking about physically hitting, I think that's a pretty big red flag. That's kind of hard to ignore. And I don't think as a man, I don't think that there is ever a situation that's going to warrant me to hit my partner. And I've been a person that's been in a relationship where I've had moments where I've been frustrated. I don't think that you understand what I'm saying, or I didn't like how you did that and why you did that, or I thought that you may have had an ulterior motive with saying what you said, but how do you resolve those issues? And are you trying to resolve those in a healthy way So, I mean, if for your for your question hitting, I feel like that's a pretty big red flag that, and that goes both ways. I feel like that's an issue that's not really talked about. I feel like we often talk about domestic abuse from from men and women, but there's so many situations where that happens in the inverse way. So, no one should have to deal with that. No one should have to deal with abuse, because it just in the long term messes up your psyche, and it's not a good relationship to have.
So what other deal breakers are there? What can y'all think of that makes you go like okay, so you have to, not you have to, but I don't know. I do know. Okay, so listen. So y'all like live with your partners, right? So like y'all are roommates, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, like the old people say, shacking up, right? So like that's a whole situation.
Why buy the cow if you get the milk free? Yeah, we know all about that. Mm-hmm.
So like, so how do y'all feel about that first, and then what have y'all dealt with like by having like basically like a roommate, basically your significant other being your roommate? Like how, like, I mean, for me, pooping is like a whole issue. Like no, like I don't want to smell that at all. Like, so you just need to like you need to go to the Burger King down the street. Like,
are you crazy?
You can't do it. You can't do that here. Like what is what is the deal breaker when it comes to living together? Like, how, I mean, something I noticed is, like women are really not selfish, but they're kind of like, oh, I want to have this in my house. I want to have this and that and the other. And then the man is like, we don't need all that stuff. Why do you want to do this? Like, no, like what is that? What is that dynamic? Like, what is that like? Cause I'm just kind of like, no.
I can go on and on. I can go on and on. Because I have a list. So I can go first. Well, me and my boyfriend, it was supposed to be a temporary situation because I do not want to be in a cohabitant situation, because this is kind of, it was new and everything. Since COVID happened, he kind of was like forced, because he had found him a job up here, and he's just getting his stuff together, and he just wanted to keep going. So that was the whole point. This is a very temporary situation, because I do want to kind of see us apart, just so I can just see, him on his own, and he can see me on my own, even though he kind of see it now. But we've had some, how you want certain areas to be clean. Some of those areas probably, are not clean sometimes. So that was kind of like something I had to get used to. And I was just like, okay, I forgot someone's actually rooming with me. So I'm just like, oh, this is just going to be very interesting. There were some arguments, because you got to think about, you're always around that person 24/7. You go to work, you come back, see, hang with them, then you go to work, and then come back. But now, since you're in COVID, since COVID, we've been quarantined together. That was kind of like a strenuous, like, I need Jesus every day moment, because we were still learning about each other, and we were still, it was so fresh and new in our relationship. So we was just kind of like, okay, yeah, let's we might need to take a little 2-second apart. So we had to kind of like find things to kind of keep us sane, to kind of keep us together and closer, things like that. So that's my take on it. Yeah.
I want to take a quick moment to introduce my friend Alfonso. He's actually married, and I think he's frozen or something. I'm not sure, but
Hey, Alfonso.
Hi, Alfonso.
He'll come in when he's unfrozen.
Yeah, he is frozen.
Well, that happened.
Probably gonna rejoin.
Yeah. So we were talking about. I may just have to like cut that. I'll just cut that.
Deal breakers.
Yes, we're talking about deal breakers, and we're talking about if you're living with somebody. So Simone brought up cleanliness, and then just being in each other's space for too long. So that's
not a deal breaker.
It's
That's
not
not
a
a
deal
deal
breaker,
breaker.
but it's an issue that you see, like that it can become an issue.
Yes. Okay, I give you that. Yes. But it was
Hey,
a reason. We've been quarantined. What else we could do? We couldn't go nowhere. We had to stay in. We had to go to the. We had to walk. Not go. We had to drive to the store, pick up, come back. Like we couldn't do anything. It was nothing for us to do. I worked out. That was about it. But that didn't last too long.
So Alfonso, we're talking about when you're living with your significant other, like what issues like come, or maybe when you first started, like what were the first like hey, like I can't be around you no more, like get out of my house, like what were those issues?
Oh, yeah, it's funny though, because when we first got together, of course you're living in that, if we're finally together, we're finally here, you're excited. Like they talk about the butterflies. And then holidays start to come around. So when holidays come around, you want to be with your mama, she wants to be with her mama, you want to be with your brother and sister, she wants to be with hers, and that's where it would get ugly.
Yeah.
Like, trying.
Wow.
It was always just about, and I felt, and I know it, I fell victim into it, right? Because we always hung around her family more, and I started getting kind of jealous of it, and I didn't realize I was falling into that. But, I started making her realize it's like, hey, this thing has to be mutual, if, okay, your family goes big on Christmas, all right, that's fine. We'll do Christmas with your family, but, and then in the morning, we'll go with my family. But for Thanksgiving, we're going to go with my family because we've always been big on Thanksgiving. But that was for sure one of the main things that would always make us, argue. And then, sometimes,
You went mute.
okay, at first, uh, there'll be times where like the house is messy and I go to work, and I gotta flip that fixed real quick. But I know there were things that I would do that I carried on from my mom's house to her house, over to our house, and she didn't like neither. I know that I had the habit of, like, let's say I dropped my dirty clothes right next to the laundry basket, and I could have just put it in the laundry basket, but I put it right outside, and that would cause my dishes, instead of taking them to the sink, I would leave them on the table, because I was used to my mom just coming and, putting them in the sink for me. And it's not big things, right? But, and then, organizing stuff, like she had a certain way. I didn't like her way. Her organization skills were horrible. I'm talking about horrible, horrible. And I would just, my mom was always had everything lined up real nice, and I would always fix everything. And I mean, it worked out for the better, but I could say this, the first couple of years, they were the hardest, because, I was still, I was just a teenager not too long before. I got married almost right after high school. So you're switching in from teenager to adulthood, kind of battling back and forth. I was more of a troublemaker with that part. She was more mature than I was, but I struggled more, fighting back between my teenage, acting like if I was a teenager, maybe even a kid, and then trying to be an adult at the same time.
So let's talk about arguing, right? So like when arguing, right? So like I feel like that's one of the biggest ones, right? It's arguing and money. Like why are we always arguing about like stuff like how do we even get past that? How do you in a relationship get past the arguing? Or what is that? What is that even about? You're all silent.
I'm just gonna say this. I think growing up, with a brother, where we fought and argued about every little thing has really matured me a little bit, because I'm still growing a little bit, to not make it easy to yell or or place the blame on the other person, but instead me and him, we really sit down and communicate. We may yell at each other maybe a couple of minutes, but when we cool ourselves off, we never go to sleep without talking about what's going on, like what just happened here. So that's kind of like a breeze. Now I'm not married yet. Now married, they may be different, because like I said, that partnership, you got to get rid of all your selfish ways. So it may be different in a marriage, but I know in a relationship, because we're still in that single-mindedness, because we're not, cannot unionize. I'm saying unionize, even though this don't sound right. Unionize in a way that we have to compromise, because we can still make our own decisions no matter what. But I know that practicing that communication helps out a lot, rather than just arguing about it and just placing blame on the other person.
I agree. I think that it's I like the last thing you said, Simone, like working on that communication. I think it's a constant effort to communicate, and sometimes it's like, sometimes you get it right, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it's not so smooth. I feel like you have to, I feel like this is a common thing that you should engage in, no matter what your relationship to a person is. You try not to fight dirty. You try to resolve the issue. I feel like if you're going into any issue or any situation where you're pointing fingers, I think that it becomes that's automatically going to be, blame game, and all the receipts get pulled, and let me tell you about this, let me tell you about that, and so it's just like, you have to be, I don't want to say be smart, but you need to be compassionate, you need to be understanding, you need to be empathetic whenever those situations come up, because, and I say when, because they're going to come up. And I know that's sometimes, depending on the day, depending on the mood, depending on the conversation, it'll go different ways. But I feel like if you're at the very least trying to be mindful of how you should be going through those arguments and what you're ultimately trying to accomplish, and you kind of need to remind yourself that you're on the same team. Like, there's something that you may want, there's something that your partner may want, and what you should ultimately be doing is, how can we appease both of us? How can we get to a place where we're both satisfied and neither one of us is having to give up too much? Because you're going to compromise, you are, but how do you get to a place where, something works for both of you? And it sounds ideal, but I feel like as long as you are trying to do that, then those arguments take on a different tone.
Sweet. I like that. That was good. Like, you should write a book, bro. You should go ahead and write that book, and then talk about your cool life and how, like, you went to Miami and you went to Egypt one time and it was awesome. I'm just kidding. No, okay. So this is the big one, right? I want to bring it up because this is part of the reason why so many people, start getting divorced, or they start cheating, right? Sex, right? So, like, how much of a factor does that play into it? A minute ago, we were talking about, like, how we live together, right? And he's like, no, I gotta go. So we're talking about how we live together, right? And the question becomes, let's say that you want to get married. Like, what is that? There's that movie, what is it, Jumping the Broom, where she made him wait, like 60 days or something like that, or like something like that. And what does that even mean? Like, how is that realistic? Do y'all think it's realistic for people to wait before they get married?
I can, speak from experience. It's very, very hard, right? You have to be careful, See, look, like me and my wife, she would always bring my nephew with her because, we both were going to church, and, we were both godly people. And so she'd bring her nephew with her so we can hang out, just to keep that temptation away. But, sometimes you wanted to be alone, and your flesh, it'll take control over you, and it'll start whispering into your ears, and you'll start falling right into it, and you ignoring the spirit, and before you know it, you're getting closer and closer each time. Before you know it, now, at the time, it's kind of a touchy subject, but I know, me and my wife, we did sin before we got married. And, I remember, she would cry. I felt, because she was holding it for after marriage, right? Because she didn't know if I was going to be the one, but I said, well, I'm not going to do that to her. I said, I'm going to fulfill my promise. She gave that to me, and then I'm going to take responsibility, and I'm going to make her my wife, and, and commit my life to her and be faithful to her, but, it's hard though, because, I remember I told you that I got COVID-19, right? So I did come positive. My wife got positive. We were both positive. We were both quarantined in our room, because in our house, quarantined away from our son. We stayed in that room every single day. We didn't go nowhere. People brought us groceries. Our son never slept by himself. He was sleeping by himself. Me and my wife, we weren't hugging. We weren't kissing. We weren't, making love. We weren't doing nothing for about almost 2 months. And I'll tell you right now, I was dying, right? No physical contact whatsoever, nothing. So you can just imagine, right? I mean, I'm gonna admit it right here. I'm very, I'm sorry to say it like this, but I mean, I'm a horn dog, I mean, she's my wife, but I'll tell you this. I mean, I'm not trying to be, but it's like when I'm in public, let's say we can all be real with each other. We know when there's a beautiful woman, or, when there's a handsome man, your mind, that person's beautiful, right? Now, what you do with your mind is up to you. You see, I used to fall into it, letting that come into my mind and, feeding off of it. But then one day I started thinking about it. I was like, what am I doing? I don't need to be doing all that. I have my wife. I need to stay committed to my wife. I made a commitment to her. So I would block those things, those thoughts, and just stay focused on my wife. I would go back to the day we got married and just focus on her and the commitment I made to her, to God, and to everybody that was there, that I was going to be faithful, but I'm not going to say that I haven't had my, temptation. Your flesh, it'll lie to you, but it could be a challenge. It's just, you just gotta hold on, knowing that if you're faithful, God's going to honor that, and he's going to bless you abundantly, right? I mean, we can go back and think of, King David. He betrayed his friend. He got married to his wife, and they were cursed. Like he lost his first son. He this and that, and so many curses. And I was like, you know what? That's my fear, being cursed. For going against my wife. So I've learned, just to be faithful. Eventually she'll get better. I'll get better, and things will go back to normal.
I think I agree that within everything Alfonso just said, like, it is a struggle. And I think that you asked the question, like, is it realistic? I do think it's realistic. I don't think that there's anything unrealistic about the expectation that, God tells us to wait, and that and then Alfonso brought up another point that, like, you have to guard your mind constantly, because you are your thoughts, and watch your thoughts, because they become your words, and your habits become your actions. Like, you have to safeguard yourself, and that's a daily fight. That's a daily struggle. It's not like, okay, I got through it today. Like, I know that now it's over. Like, it gets easier. I feel like it gets easier as you try to do it more. But if you succumb to it, like I said, like, we are innately selfish by nature, and at the end of the day, we want these things that bring us satisfaction. We want these things that give us that instant gratification. And so, like, me and my girlfriend, we've had to have those conversations. Like, like, what are we doing? If like, do we need to? How do we enter into a state of celibacy? How do we ensure that this is something that we don't just honor on a Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Saturday comes out? Like, she's like, like, it's a real fight. And so I think that, I mean, to be short, I feel like in today's age, like, it's going, Lord willing, it'll be 2021 in a few months, Lord willing. It'll still be a realistic expectation, and there are people that do it. And I feel like if you fall short, I feel like that's the thing about God's grace, that like you can still, it's not too late to put that effort in to try to rectify or fix anything wrongdoings that you've passed or have done, because God's paid for those sins. And I'm not saying like, oh, like, let's do it because he's already forgiven us. No, it's like, if you've earnestly have seen the fault in your ways and you've turned from that, God sees that as just as glorified as the people that were able to do it from the get-go. So everybody's got their struggles. For some people, it's more of a struggle for some people than others. For some people, it's not as much of a struggle. And so I think at the end of the day, it comes down to effort and your willingness to fight your flesh. So, but you're right. It's very, especially being in a situation where you live with your partner, it's very tough, very. But it gets easier. It gets better. So.
I want to make it clear that he said that it can be difficult if you are staying with a significant other. It can be difficult for you to resist, and I think maybe that's the reason why the old people say like don't do that, because you're like giving yourself room to slip. I want to move on. So one of the biggest issues, that I feel like a lot of like men and women have is that it's like women, they want romance. They want The Notebook. They want, I can't think of any other romantic movies. And then men, they're just like, like, I don't want none of that. Like, let's go in the room and get it over with. Like, let's go. So like, is that real or what?
Yes, it's real.
It's real.
Very real. Very
What?
real.
I was hoping y'all would be like, no.
No, very real. But I can say on the girls' end, for me, it may sound weird, but I do not like The Notebook. I feel like that's really too cheesy for me. Like, I think for me, I could be on the guy side. Like, I just want something simple, but don't surprise me, because I hate surprises, because I'm always the one that wants to know, like, where we going, what we doing, so how we doing this, so where we going this way, are we going that way, so what do you want me to wear? Like, I'm always that technical when it comes to like any type of big thing for me, but romantical. But then on the guy side, like right now, my boyfriend's birthday is in 4 months, and I'm like, so what do you want to do for your birthday? I don't know. 4 months though, like if we want to go on a trip, like if I want to take you on a trip, I gotta pay for something. Like if you want to watch or something, I can't buy a watch, on payday. I got bills to pay. Like, it's a lot of stuff that we just like, dude, just tell me what you want. But it's just like, it's just so simple. Or this is my favorite one. Oh, I'm not picky. I'm like, that doesn't help at all. At all.
So Alfonso, what do you do when you feel like your wife is really, I don't know, like googly eyes, I guess, I don't know. Like, what is, because y'all are like, I mean, I imagine like in my head, oh no, he had to go. I imagine, like the girls are like hard eyes and they're like, oh.
I mean, we are. We are, because for my birthday, I didn't like this. I could just say this for why I feel like this person that I'm with is, hopefully he is the one, is because I've never celebrated a birthday with anyone. I've never, I'm not anyone, but anybody of a significant other, and what he did was, I can say I was googly. I had the heart eyes coming out because it was a surprise. Like, I didn't know a surprise could do that. But when he took me onto his cabin, I wanted to go on a cabin trip, but I couldn't go on a cabin trip because of COVID. So one of the things that he did, he just like, all right, well, I'll just think of something. And then we just drove maybe like 30 minutes away, and looky there is a cabin. I was just like, so so I was
Wow.
so that was like, I was kind of like, oh, okay. So I got the googly eyes, but then I was like, dude, you could have just told me. I could have been extra prepared, but you know, it was dope though.
I love that. I love every minute of that. I think that at the end of the day, everybody wants that, to feel special. I think that I feel like society would tell us, you know, if you're a man, you're supposed to be ruled, like, you know, like you just take care of your things, and you be good. You do you good, and you take care of your princess or your queen. And if you're queen, you act like a queen, and you're supposed to be treated like a queen. But you know, at the end of the day, everybody wants to be treated special, and I think that's what makes great relationships work, is that both partners are in that relationship to serve each other. And I think that goes back to what I was saying, you know, at the very beginning, like you asked what's the purpose of marriage, and I said, well, I personally feel like it's a way that God teaches us to love each other unconditionally. We're never gonna get it, but it's a way that we can work on it throughout our lives, because it's a commitment that you're not supposed to break. And so you know, you serve each other. You're not necessarily supposed to be like, what's in this for me? What can you do for me? That's not the mindset. And so I think that I feel like, and Alfonso maybe will speak to this more because I feel like he's married, but like I would imagine that a happy husband has a wife that tends to him and that takes care of his needs and that treats him special and lets him know that he's on her mind. And I feel like a happy wife gets the same thing. She has a husband that's willing to go to bat for her, be there for her emotionally, let her know that he's committed. Like, and those things go both ways. And so I feel like everybody's, you know, the reason why so many relationships don't work out is because in some ways that's missing. It's like, you know, that instant gratification. All right, you got your sex, cool. What's going to keep you around? If that's not there, you know, then it's tough. So,
Yeah. If I could touch up on on what Joseph's saying, he's totally right. You know, you can't just just me. You're gonna, do this for me. You're gonna do that for me. One thing that I'm realizing on my own is that if I serve her, if I give her love, if I just do, spontaneous things, I'll go wash the dishes, I'll sweep, I'll do the laundry, or, I'll take, whatever it is around the house, and I go and I show her love, she'll do the other things naturally. I won't even have to ask her. Like, she'll all of a sudden, like, this beautiful meal is made. She makes dessert. She's being lovey-dovey. So it's a mutual thing. There's a thing that I had read. It said that your wife is a reflection of you. So if she's always looking down, depressed, sad, complaining about everything, well, what's the husband doing? What's the man doing at the house? Is he not, and so I always keep that in mind. I don't want people to look at my wife and be like, she must be miserable. I don't want to know. What I want is when people see her, they see me, they see the love, they see the, that I'm there for her, that I motivate her, that I push her to, to achieve her goals, whatever she wants in this life, that she can do it. And I've always given her everything, and I always take that. That's what they say that, our wives there are projects for life. She's a project that you work on your whole life. So if I know I'm failing in an area today, you know, if God willing, he gives us the next day to try to make it better. And that's another thing that I live by. Yeah.
I just want to cry, but I can't cry right now because it's like y'all are speaking truth right now. Like this is really good. Like everything that y'all are saying is just really pinpoint of like how us as women, or just me as a woman, just get googly eyed a little bit, and then how you all are just reminding me of how me and my partner is right now. I'm just like, oh my God, it's just like so amazing. Okay, I'm sorry. I had a
Preach.
moment. It's like y'all really are preaching. It's just like, you know, and I think that's one thing that us as women need to hear from our, you know, our men, because it seems like when you all were talking about that interchange of like, you know, or like a consistent project, or knowing that you're both serving each other, a lot of women, I put in the chat like submission, a lot of women that don't see that as a way of life, because I'm thinking about that selfishness of like, oh, you know, I'm selfish right now, but oh wait, I gotta submit to you, but not knowing what that submission looks like, because what you all are saying, like how you all are serving each other, how you all are, you know, consistently come. I mean, I'm just like, it's just really good how this is coming together, and I feel like if we continue to, if women and men kind of look and focus on that entail of like how we're serving one another, how we're affirming each other, how we're loving one another unconditionally, knowing that that's how God and Jesus loved us so much unconditionally, I think that marriage can excel. But like I said, if you don't have that intertwined, it's not going to work like at all. So yeah, like, that's good.
I love that. I know Daniel like y'all taking it.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Daniel, but that was really good. Like what y'all said, that was really good.
I'm just like, okay, all right.
But I just want to add before you go to the next question, I'll never ever forget the I don't know what to call it, the activity that we did at HG, where we washed each other's feet. And I feel like a lot of people were turned off by like, oh, why gotta wash his feet? But I remember Mr. Marvin and Miss Daniels talking about, you know, this is what God calls us to do, that you serve each other, that even Jesus, because at that point in time when Jesus did that with his disciples, it was seen as one of the lowest things that you could do is you washing one's feet. And so Jesus did that for his disciples, and I feel like for us to practice that was really symbolic of, again, trying to emulate that unconditional love. Like your sister Simone says, submission. Like you both have to submit before each other. And I think that so many times in today's society, women don't like the idea of submission. They hear submission and it's like I'm a strong, independent woman, you know? And I feel like a lot of men don't like submission because it's like, I'm a man. I do what I want to do.
Yeah, submission is slavery.
Yeah, and that's the mindset at least. And so I think that for people to understand what true submission is requires knowledge and tapping into the love of Jesus. It taps into the love of God, because if you don't have that, you're just going to be so misguided and you're missing out on what God has blessed you with within this union of marriage. Because I'm sure Alfonso is having a good time. Like, you know, like life's not perfect, but when you have a partner that's a rock by your side and they can count on you to be a rock by their side, that's what God has blessed us with. And so, yeah, marriage should be a beautiful thing if both partners just submit, you know. It's that he made it to be really simple. It's that simple. So
that part.
So in your opinion, this is my last question, because I feel like a lot of people don't plan this out, you know. They don't plan. And so communication is really important, right? I really want to summarize. So communication is really important. When we think about marriage, we're thinking about how we can submit to each other, how we can love each other, and how we can communicate over time and get to know things about each other so that we can make this union work. Something that we haven't really talked about is children. So like, do you think that being married means that you're going to have kids, or does it not? Or like, you can be married without children? I mean, and I'm talking about young people, like people our age, 20, 26, 27, 20, 30. Like, can we get married and not have children? Or is that's gonna happen? Like, you're gonna have kids. Like, you should.
But we gotta also remember that having children is a blessing from God. It's not really something that we're forced to have. And God blesses us with a child. So I know for me, I haven't had a child yet, but I do want to have a couple of them.
Random kids.
I want to have a couple of them. Even if I can't have them like naturally, I do want to have them. I do want to have at least an adoptive baby or somebody or a surrogate. Something around that field. But that's only if God's will is leading me to have that child. I think what society has done to women like me is that we're on a biological time clock. I'm a 30-year-old woman that hasn't had a child, so everyone is kind of looking at us as like, okay, so are you gonna have a kid? If you're a woman that don't have kids, don't have kids. What is that saying? They're not a good wife or something like that. It's something around that nature. Just like it's always a forceful nature of gossip or rumor, like they're trying to force us, like, hey, when you gonna have a kid? Oh, we're waiting on our grandbabies. Yeah. Oh, make sure you don't do this. I'm just sitting here like, well, can I just enjoy my husband right now? Me and my husband just having fun, And I think that's what there's missing, because I think a lot of my friends now that are trying to have kids, it's hard for them to have kids because of the pressure of their family saying like, oh, can I have a child? Oh, I can have a child. When you gonna have my grandbabies? Oh, we're waiting. Oh, I see your brother had about 2 or 3 of them. So what about you? And I'm looking like, can you stay out of my business over here? It's none of your business of what's going on over here. So I think it's really all about that pressure. And then for me, it's all about of God's will if we are going to be blessed with that child, because we may not, I may not be able to have that child that I want.
Me and my wife, we have just one boy, our son. He's 6 years old. But after he was born, I could tell you right now, we've been trying and trying and trying, and people the same thing, asking, when's the next one coming? When's the girl coming? When? And you seeing other people get pregnant and they're already on their 3rd, 4th baby, and sometimes I'm thinking, well, you know what? I mean, and then sometimes you hear about people that kill their babies, and it's like, well, why did they even get blessed in the first place? And sometimes we may not understand it, and it seems unfair, but only God knows. We just put it in God's hands, but and I try to pour everything that I can into my son's life, but and it's not everybody wants to have kids. I know a lot of people that don't want to have kids. I know some people that don't want to have kids because of their father or their mother wasn't in their life when they were young, so they just don't want to ever make a child go through that unnecessary pain. I'm even familiar with that pain. My father wasn't in the picture, so one of my sisters, she doesn't want to have kids because that same father that wasn't in my life wasn't in her life neither. So you ask her if she wants to have kids, she's like, no, I don't want to have kids. It's just me and my husband. That's it. And everyone has to respect that, and I understand why. But if anything, I can say this. My son. Like I said, I pour into my wife, I pour into my son, and there's times where me and my wife were arguing, and my son, he'll come and just hug us and look at us. He's like, why are y'all fighting? Dad, give her a hug. Mommy, give him a hug. Dad, give him a kiss. I'm being dead serious. Like, he has stopped us from fighting. You can't be mad at him. You can't just start hollering at him. Like, he's trying to fix the situation. He's literally sometimes the glue of us. Like, he'll stop so many arguments, and I'm grateful for him. And we pray every day, and just for more. But if it's not, it's in God's hands, and I mean, we've even considered adopting, but we're kind of scared, I mean, because I don't know, I mean, that's probably another topic for another day. But we've talked about it, but I don't know if it's both of us have to come to an agreement. You know, it's not just me or I want. You know, but it's yeah, that's what I got.
Thanks, Alfonso. Go ahead, Joe.
I agree with what both of you guys said. I think that I don't want to repeat everything, but I just agree. I think that sometimes children are in the plans that God has for you. Sometimes they're not. I feel like we've seen countless, and I feel like every situation that we can think of, we've seen some type of reflection of the situation in the Bible. We've seen people that were blessed with children way past the natural limit, blessed with children, but we're still able to do, God's work. So I feel like if children is in the plans, and sometimes they're in our plans, but they're not in God's plans for us. And so does that change anything about the love that you and your partner should have and try to have that, God's blessed with? It shouldn't. I'm sure that in our humanness that we may not always see God's, plans play out. We might not always understand what he has going for us, but I think that a family that has children, is just as blessed as a family that doesn't have children. And so yeah.
Thank you, and thank you, and thank you, and thank you. So that's all that we have for this episode, and I'm grateful for you guys showing up and showing out. Alfonso just got off work, and he's like, I gotta get there, and I'm grateful, man. So I want to just summarize real quick. We were talking about marriage. We're talking about things that you have to do in your marriage and things that we shouldn't do in our marriages. Just things that are just deal breakers and issues that we can have throughout our lives. But as long as we're submitting to one another, we're loving each other unconditionally, and we're seeking to love each other. Whether you have kids or whether you don't have kids, it's the mental attitude. It's the seeking to love. It's the I don't want to argue. I mean, but then again, girls these days, they want to argue. So anyway, thank you again for being on my show. I'll take it. That's the end of it. All right, guys, keep your head up.
I'm so done. So done. I think that look, you can't even stop the record.
Thank you for joining us on Danielosophy. Despite the hardships that we face in this world, we have to stand strong in faith and pursue what displays love. I hope that this discussion reaches your home and your families. Keep the faith, love your neighbor, and we'll get through this together.